There are moments when the body goes still, not out of fear, not from lack, but from a deep remembering. And in that stillness, something ancient stirs. Not a thought, not a craving, but a voice, soft, subtle, sacred. The soul begins to speak. Welcome to InnerMoonlight, where silence becomes a path and truth walks barefoot. If this video resonates, if something within you leans in to listen, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let us walk together, not toward more noise, but into the quiet that frees us. We live in a world where pleasure is everywhere, on our screens, in our hands, within reach at all times. We eat not because we're hungry, but because we are restless. We touch not because we feel love, but because we fear the silence in between. We chase one high after another, yet somehow we still feel empty after the feast. Why? Because the hunger was never in the stomach, it was in the soul. Beneath every craving lies a deeper thirst, not for taste or flesh or climax, but for meaning, for presence, for peace. The body screams, but the soul whispers, and in the noise of indulgence, the whisper gets drowned. Abstinence, the choice to pause, to refrain, to withhold, is not about denying the body. It's about remembering the soul. It's not about punishment, it's about presence. The Buddha once taught that desire is not the enemy, but clinging is. It's not wrong to feel longing. What causes suffering is our blind reaction to it, the grasping, the chasing, the losing of ourselves in the fire. But what if we just sat with the flame? What if, instead of feeding every urge, we simply watched it rise and fall? There is something sacred in that space, the space between the wanting and the reaching, the space where we feel the tremble, the tension, the tug, and we stay. Not because we are saints, but because we are seekers. When we abstain from sex, from food, from comfort, from distraction, we are not becoming less human. We are becoming more awake. We are not abandoning joy. We are rediscovering what joy actually is. For most of us, indulgence has become a reflex. We feel discomfort and we fix it. We feel empty and we fill it. But have we ever sat with that emptiness long enough to hear what it's actually saying? Abstinence invites us to stop running, to meet ourselves, to meet the ache, to learn its name. And when we do, we often discover the ache was never for pleasure. It was for presence. It is easy to touch a body. It is far harder to touch a soul. And yet, the body, when honored in silence, becomes a gateway to the soul. The world will tempt us with quick answers, fast pleasures, temporary highs, but the soul waits, patiently, quietly, compassionately, for us to come home, not by adding more, but by choosing less, not by numbing out, but by waking up. Abstinence is not a rule, it is a rhythm. It is the art of stepping back, so something deeper can step forward. It is the gentle courage to say, I will not feed this hunger until I know what it's truly for. And slowly, gently, something shifts. Our cravings become teachers, our impulses become mirrors, our bodies become sacred ground, not for shame, not for suppression, but for listening. In that listening, we begin to hear the voice we forgot, the voice that isn't screaming, the voice that doesn't demand, the voice that says, you are already whole. So let us not fear the silence. Let us walk toward it. Let us remember, when the body goes silent, the soul finally speaks. What happens when we stop reaching? When the hands unclench, the breath slows, and the appetite is no longer fed on impulse? At first, there is noise. The mind stirs like a restless child denied a toy. It resists, it protests, it howls for the thing it cannot have. But then, if we stay, if we breathe, if we bow in patience, something begins to unfold. Abstinence, though feared by the world, is not a void. It is a mirror held up not to shame us, but to show us what we've been running from. When the body grows still, the soul begins to speak, and what it says is not always comfortable, but it is always true. We may find sadness we buried under pleasure. We may uncover loneliness that sex tried to silence. We may meet anger, guilt, confusion, raw and real, no longer numbed by food, by screens, by dopamine hits. But this is not a curse. This is the beginning of seeing. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from ignorance, not knowing, and abstinence, when embraced with presence, becomes a gate through which clarity enters. We begin to understand our patterns, our pain, our projections. We begin to see where we hurt and why we hide. In silence, we hear our stories. In stillness, we meet our shadow. And in this tender confrontation, something gentle awakens. Compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. The part of us that chased pleasure wasn't evil, it was hurting. The part of us that couldn't stop wasn't wicked, it was wounded. When we abstain not as punishment but as practice, we finally give ourselves the chance to heal. This is why monastics fast, why hermits withdraw, why sages speak less and listen more. Because they have learned the ancient secret. When we stop feeding the surface, the depths begin to rise. And what lives in those depths? A different kind of desire. Not for touch, but for truth. Not for noise, but for knowing. Not for excitement, but for enlightenment. As the dust settles inside us, we realize we are not just bodies reacting, we are beings remembering. And in that remembering, there is a beauty no pleasure can imitate. The joy of clarity, the grace of self-restraint, the dignity of choosing soul over sensation. This does not mean we become cold or rigid or superior. Quite the opposite. We become more human, more tender, more aware of how sacred this life is, and how easy it is to lose it in chasing what never truly satisfies. Abstinence, then, is not about being less alive, but more attuned to what life actually is. It opens the space between the urge and the action, the space where we can ask, do I need this, or do I need to feel something else? And in that pause, there is power, the power to choose, to observe rather than obey, to witness rather than react, to bless rather than consume. In that space, we start to hear the song of our soul again, a melody not made of craving, but of clarity, a rhythm not of rush, but of reverence. We notice the wind for the first time, the way it moves across the skin when no one is touching us. We hear the birds, not as background noise, but as holy messengers in mourning robes. We taste food, not with greed, but with gratitude. A single bite becomes sacred. A moment alone becomes enough. This is what abstinence reveals. We were never lacking. We were just disconnected. Disconnected from breath, from stillness, from source. But now, we return. Not with fanfare, not with force, but with folded hands and quiet awe. And as we walk back into our bodies, slowly, softly, consciously, we carry something new. Not shame, not pride, but presence. The kind that sanctifies even the smallest act. the kind that turns abstinence into intimacy with the divine. Let the world chase its highs. Let us choose something deeper. Let us remember, what abstinence reveals is not what we lose, but what we had forgotten to feel. Desire does not knock politely. It bursts in like a storm, wild, beautiful, insistent. It rises in the belly, in the blood, in the breath. It seduces with images, with memory, with imagined touch. It tells us, this is urgent, this is now, this is you. But is it? Who are we when desire takes over? Are we the hunger or the one who sees it? This is the battle, not of good versus evil, but of noise versus knowing. It is not a war to be won with swords, but with stillness. It is not a question of should I or shouldn't I, but who is speaking and who is listening. The Buddha called this Mara, the tempter, the deluder, the whisperer of illusions. Mara doesn't come with horns. Mara comes with suggestion, just this once. You've been good long enough. This is natural. This is yours. And in truth, desire is natural. It is not our enemy, but left untended, it becomes our ruler. The way a vine strangles a tree, desire, when fed without awareness, chokes the soul. It winds itself around every choice, every motive, every breath. And before we know it, we are no longer walking, we are being led. So what is devotion? Devotion is not suppression. It is not gritting our teeth and pretending we do not feel. It is not throwing shame at our longings. Devotion is the art of remaining awake in the presence of fire, to feel the heat and bow instead of burn, to breathe through the craving and find beneath it something more enduring. You see, every desire is a teacher wearing a mask. The urge to consume teaches us where we feel empty. The urge to chase teaches us where we are still running. The urge to possess teaches us where we've mistaken love for ownership. Devotion listens to these teachings without reacting. It places a cushion beneath the storm. It says, yes, I see you. Yes, I feel you. But I do not belong to you. This battle happens not once, but every day, in the small private hours when no one is watching. It happens when you say no to the midnight message, when you step away from the screen, when you choose silence over stimulation. These moments look small, but they shape your soul. Every time you honor your devotion over your desire, you strengthen the roots of your being. You grow steady, you grow spacious, you grow sovereign. And when you do fall, for you will, as we all do, you do not shame yourself. You learn, you bow, you begin again. Because devotion is not about perfection. It is about returning over and over to the truth of who you are. And who are you? You are not your urges. You are not your fantasies. You are not the flicker of wanting that passes through the body like wind through grass. You are the one who witnesses. You are the calm beneath the waves. You are the space in which both desire and devotion arise. This knowing does not make desire disappear, but it takes away its tyranny. It no longer commands you. It converses with you. You do not fight desire. You befriend it, but you do not follow it blindly. You hold it in your hands like a flame, aware of its power, aware of its beauty, but never confusing it for light. And sometimes, yes, you will fall in love with the flame again. You will touch too soon. You will taste too fast. You will forget. But devotion whispers, come back to your breath. Come back to your body. Come back to the deeper longing, not for pleasure, but for peace. because beneath every craving is the cry of the soul, see me, know me, hold me. And when we choose devotion, we answer that cry. We say, I will not abandon myself to momentary fires. I will stay, I will listen, I will love you in silence. And that is liberation, not cold, not rigid, but radiant, like a lotus that blooms from the muddy river of longing. So if you find yourself torn between the pull of desire and the call of your soul, do not panic. That tension is holy. That ache is a doorway. Let it open you. Let it reveal who is really in charge. And let your devotion become the path, not of denial, but of divine remembrance. There is a soft, radiant strength that blooms in the heart of one who has learned to say no, not with harshness, not with fear, but with reverence. No is not a wall, it is a doorway. It is the moment we say, I know what I feel, but I remember who I am. In a world that praises indulgence, where saying yes is confused with being alive, abstinence can feel like an absence. But in truth, the sacred no is not a denial. It is a declaration of self-honoring, of clarity, of sovereignty. To say no to the craving is to say yes to the calm. To say no to the instant high is to say yes to the enduring light. And this, dear one, is a practice not of punishment, but of purification. When the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree, Mara came again and again with distractions, temptations, illusions. But the Buddha did not fight. He did not run. He did not yell. He simply touched the earth and stayed. That is the essence of restraint. Not running, not resisting, but remaining rooted. Saying no becomes sacred when it is no longer about control, but about compassion. We say no, not to starve ourselves, but to feed the soul what it truly hungers for. We say no, not because desire is dirty, but because our inner clarity is worth more than a fleeting thrill. Every time we choose not to chase the craving, we are not becoming less human. We are becoming more whole. Because there is a kind of freedom that only comes when we are no longer slaves to our impulses. And this freedom is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not post on social media. It blooms in silence, like a lotus that grows from the muddy refusal to react. It appears in the quiet moment when we turn down a familiar temptation, and suddenly there is space. Space to breathe, space to observe, space to remember. And in that space, something else begins to move, something subtler, softer, stronger. The soul speaks. The body, no longer driven by appetite, becomes a temple of awareness. We begin to feel not just the ache, but the energy behind it. We begin to see not just what we want, but why we want it. And in seeing clearly, we choose wisely. This is the sacred power of saying no. It reclaims our dignity. It sharpens our discernment. It strengthens the inner spine, the place from which true choice arises. It is not about building walls against the world. It is about building bridges toward our true self. And yes, saying no is hard at first, especially when the world seduces us with now, especially when we are lonely, tired, unseen, especially when we fear that saying no will make us miss out. But what are we really missing? Another rush? Another regret? Another moment where we betray our own center just to feel something? We have been taught to say yes to everything, every invite, every urge, every impulse, as if life will pass us by unless we consume it all. But the wise know, life deepens, not through more, but through meaning. One conscious bite nourishes more than 1,000 unconscious feasts. One loving touch given in presence is more healing than 100 encounters chased in absence. One breath taken in solitude can connect us more deeply than any crowd. And all of this becomes accessible when we dare to say no. The no that is rooted in love. The no that is whispered with kindness. The no that makes space for a deeper yes. A yes to peace, to truth, to soul. So let us not fear the boundaries. Let us not shame the restraint. Let us bow to those moments when we tremble with wanting and still choose stillness. That is not weakness. That is mastery. That is the quiet fire of one who walks the middle path, not swayed by hunger, not hardened by resistance, but softened by awareness. We are not here to escape desire. We are here to outgrow its illusions. And in that gentle blooming, the sacred no becomes not a rejection of life, but a reverence for it. Let your no be a prayer. Let your no be a mirror. Let your no be a promise. I will not abandon myself again. And in that promise, may you find the strength you forgot you had, and the silence you never knew you needed. There is a kind of lightness not found in the clouds, but in the heart, a quiet spaciousness that comes when we are no longer bound to every craving, not because we suppress, but because we see, because we've met the storm within and learned how to sit in the rain without running. This is the path of living light, not hollow, not empty, but simple, sacred, sufficient. When we stop feeding the noise, what remains is presence. And presence, dear one, is the true nourishment, not the kind that fills the mouth, but the kind that fills the soul. To live beyond indulgence is not to abandon joy. It is to rediscover its purest form, the kind of joy that does not depend on stimulation, validation, or reward, the joy of breathing, of walking without needing a destination, of sitting in your own body and not feeling like you must escape, of looking out at the morning sky and knowing, I don't need anything else right now. That is the abundance the world forgets to mention. We are taught to chase, to conquer, to earn, to consume. But the ancient ones knew a different secret. The more we hold, the heavier we become. And so they released, they fasted, they retreated, not to suffer, but to remember how to float. Living light is not detachment from the world. It is deeper intimacy with it, without dependence. You eat, but you are not consumed by the taste. You love, but you are not swallowed by possession. You enjoy, but you are not lost in longing. You are with life, but not chained to it. And that, dear friend, is liberation. When you walk in this way, abstinent, not from experience, but from grasping, you begin to notice how little you actually need and how much more fully you can give. Without the weight of wanting, your hands are free to serve. Without the fog of overindulgence, your mind is clear to see truth. Without the chase, your heart is open, not seeking to be filled, but to overflow. In the silence that abstinence opens, something begins to blossom, not a rigid self-denial, but a tender spaciousness, a softness that doesn't seek control, but simply breathes in the now. You may still feel desire, of course you will, but desire no longer drives the chariot. It rides in the back seat while awareness holds the reins. This is how we return, not as monks hiding from the world, but as luminous beings, able to walk through the market and not lose our soul, able to touch without clinging, able to feel without drowning, able to live lightly And isn't that what we longed for all along? Not more of everything, but peace within anything. Not endless indulgence, but enough stillness to hear our own heart again. Not escape, but presence. So the next time you feel the wave rise, that urge to taste, to grab, to lose yourself, pause, breathe, listen, ask gently, what am I truly hungry for? And let that question be your guide, not to judge, not to deny, but to choose with love, with clarity, with reverence. For every time you do, the light grows, the fog lifts, the soul sings softly beneath the noise, and you remember, you were never lacking, only distracted. So now we rest, not in emptiness, but in the fullness that comes from letting go. We've walked through hunger and found healing. We've faced desire and discovered devotion. And now, with soft breath and steady heart, we carry this light forward, not as burden, but as blessing. May your no be sacred. May your silence be rich, and may your soul always speak louder than the noise. This is the way of inner moonlight, not to add more, but to return home, to the peace that was always waiting within. Be still, be soft, be whole,